afternoon and welcome to another edition of Client Conversations brought to you by MCL Construction. I'm Travis Justice. I will be your host over the next half hour or so, and we've got a great program and a great discussion coming up over the next 30 minutes as we're going to be talking to Jeff DeWispelare, the president and CEO of the Omaha Home for Boys, celebrating 100 years in the Omaha community, and it's going to be a fascinating conversation as we get to know more about Jeff and know more about the Omaha Home for Boys. A little bit about MCL Construction. You can find us on social media. You can find us on LinkedIn. That's where you can see us live right now, as well as Facebook and YouTube. Just search MCL Construction. We're also available on Twitter, Instagram, and check out a lot of information about our company on the website, www.mclconstruction.com. We were founded in 1987. Our corporate headquarters are in Omaha, Nebraska. Right now, this says 171 employees. I did not do my homework because I should have updated this before today's program, as we are now over 200 employees within our organization. And we want to remind you that for many businesses, navigating that entire construction process and knowing who to trust can be overwhelming. At MCL Construction, our people, we simplify the process by listening to you, planning with you, and then executing and continuing the relationship to build your vision. Jeff DeWispelare is the president and CEO of the Omaha Home for Boys. He's been with the organization 5.5 years, the last 3.5 as the president and CEO. In his previous career, he was also in the YMCA world, and he joins us now live from not from his office, but from his home. And Jeff, thanks for taking the time to join us today.
Just glad to be here. Thanks, Travis.
You know, first of all, we just had a massive wind and rainstorm in Omaha, and where the Omaha Home for Boys is located, right around that 52nd and Ames area. People, just let me paint a picture for you. It's an older neighborhood with lots and lots of trees. Did you have much damage on your campus?
You know, we were pretty fortunate. The trees themselves stayed in the ground, which was kind of unique. Some people lost the big trees, but we had a lot of just limbs and, all over the campus. And that's one of the reasons I'm home today. We were having power issues, and I didn't trust that my power would stay on at the office. So I just got home a few minutes ago so we could do this.
And before we keep going, we need to dispel the myth that you and I are not brothers. We are bald, but we are not brothers.
Same barber, right? Not brother.
I'm going to be honest. So I do mine about every 2 days. How often do you do yours?
Yeah, 2 to 3 is about where I'm at as well.
Now, here's what I've learned, though. I'm a straight edge guy, so I'll use the Bic. But a lot of my friends that are bald use an electric razor. Are you a blade guy or are you an electric razor guy?
Yeah, you're gonna think that I set this up, but I did not. I've been blade my whole life. I've had a bald head. I had cancer when I was 30 and 31. And so I had chemotherapy. So I just been shaving it since. But I've been blade up till 2 weeks ago. I got this new razor with all the extra things on it, and it's really been pretty good. So I've been wondering about that because it's funny. I think Google listens to what we say because I've had all these things. I think or Pitbull has one and another, and there's a bunch of them. So it has like 5 razors on it, right? So you're telling me it works because I've been like too good to be true. So I may have to try it now. Yeah, I did get it just for that quick, so you didn't have to fully lather the head up and all that. So it's been going really well for the last few weeks. So I've been very happy with it's like Freedom something. I can't even remember the name of it. But
oh, man. As a nonprofit organization, I'm sure the last year has tested your will and your stamina. And talk to me about how the Omaha Home for Boys was able to get through the COVID-19 pandemic.
Well, we're not like everybody else, but we have kind of a two-prong approach, right? We have administrative staff and people that do the work, and then we have folks directly with kids, and that part of our business couldn't shut down, right? We had kids in our care, and we can't not be there. We have to be there for them. So we did as much offsite as we could with those that were administrative. Obviously, the PPP loan was huge for us, just coming through. With the Small Business Association and that administration, that has really helped us to offset some of our costs because we had to do a lot of incentivizing and things like that for shift coverage and all those kinds of things. So, and then I will say that, our donations were down for a while. And then at the end of 2020, things just picked up. And it's just, I always say, it's just typical of Omaha. The philanthropy, the people, they stepped up. And so our donations came back in at almost full force by the end of the year, which was, in my world, that's a huge deal. And so that was very well appreciated. And so far this year, we're off to a good start as well. So people of Omaha are stepping up and supporting, and that's great to see.
It's amazing because we have a nonprofit here called Scare Away Cancer. And, we were really worried because it's not huge. We raise maybe $200,000-$300,000 a year, but you take away your major event and just the unknown, you're like, are you going to survive through this? And you're right. The generosity that comes from a community that is so dedicated to philanthropy and giving, you worry, but then you realize the community you live in.
Yeah, absolutely true.
So, people may not know, and I think there's maybe some confusion. I think there's a lot of people who go, what is the Omaha Home for Boys? Because they hear it's been around 100 years, and I'm sure you get this all the time. Well, are you affiliated with Boys Town? What's the difference? I mean, that happens, right? So
absolutely.
Give everybody that's watching this some information about the Omaha Home for Boys.
And I get that question, Travis, everywhere I go. So are you a part of Boys Town? We're very similar. We work closely with Boys Town. We both work with the same population, if you will. Obviously, Boys Town's a larger organization, so they have some things that we don't offer. But the way I tell it for people that have never really understood who we are or what we do is we step in as parents. So we have some kids that something's going on in their life, their parents aren't there, or the parents maybe are making bad decisions. So we step in those younger kids' lives where they come live with us, just like they would live with you or like your kids do. Then the older programs start at age 19. And those are those kids that would be on their own, but yet don't have a support system. So we become the pseudo parent there as well. So we help them with driver's license if they need help with the FAFSA to get into college, trades work, whatever it is they're trying to accomplish in life. They have a goal set that we work with them on all the way up to 26 years old. So that's kind of the approach we take as we enter ourselves where there's a gap. And if those of you that have seen our logo before on the B, I always show people, which you can't see really great on my shirt, but there's a ladder built into that logo for a reason. And it's there to say we take kids whatever rung they're on and we try to take them to the next rung. So they may be at the bottom of the ladder, they're coming up to the next step. If they're at the top of the ladder, we're trying to get them off the ladder, right? It's that. So we deal with kids that are ready to go to college, some that have never even 4 credits in their high school career. So obviously they're not even able to get a GED or anything. And so we try to help them wherever they are. So that's kind of a quick summary of a lot of programming that we do.
So is that common for, and I'm a novice here, right? Is that common for a lot of organizations to take somebody up to 26 years of age? Because sometimes it's like you hear the term age out of the system or age out. Are you unique in that aspect that you're going up to that 26-year mark?
I don't think, and forgive me for not knowing for sure. I don't think we're unique, but I do know that there are people that work in chunks. So they work with the little kids. These work with the high school age. That's what that aging out is. Foster care ages out at adulthood, 19. So we have a program for that early ages, and we have a program for after. So we believe our continuum of care is more extensive than a lot. And again, that's not a knock on people that are doing specific work, but we've tried really hard to support all levels. And we work closely with a lot of agencies here in Omaha to make that happen. So I'd say, and the 26 came from if you remember the federal law that changed for health insurance for your kids and all that. So that extended that age for us as well.
And I think that's really kind of where, our relationship with MCL and the Omaha Home for Boys was some of that independent living too, right? Yeah. We remodeled some of those apartments that were able to help people get on their feet and give them a safe and secure place to live. Let's go through some of the history of the Omaha Home for Boys, because this is a vast history. It dates back to 1920 when it was founded by the Omaha Masonic Lodges. And I think a lot of people may know, you moved into your current location, which is 52nd in Ames in 1945. I think a lot of people who drive out north see the Cooper Farm. Is that still active? Do you still use that? What's going on with that?
Yes, we still have. We raise cattle out there. The boys go out and boys and girls go out and work with cattle. They show in 4-H shows, so it's still an active farm. We did partner. One of the buildings was sold to Nova, who does the drug treatment work. So through a partnership with them, we just gave them or sold off one of our buildings, but the rest of it is active out there.
And then in 1994, that's when the Jacobs Place Transitional Living Program came into being. Independent living in 2010. Supportive housing and clinical service programs began in 2018. And then 2020, the Crisis Stabilization Program began. You have so many programs. Is there one that gets, should we say, more use than the other? One that's more critical than the other, or are they all the same?
I'd say they're all equally needed. What I have found when it comes to, I guess, support or what people get excited about, it's that older group. It's the group that would be on their own and just don't have anybody with them to kind of walk the path that they're trying to get down. And the last two that you mentioned, the supportive housing and crisis stabilization, are new programs to us in the last few years. The supportive housing is our first program where we don't take apart the family. I always say people, we take pieces of the family apart, like we take the kid or we take the parents or the person with a drug problem, and we focus on that one individual, but then they come back together and it kind of doesn't work, right? Sometimes. So this one is one where we would have the parents, and if they had kids, all living in an apartment together, as long as they followed the guidelines and the protocols, they can do that with reduced rent. And then it progressively goes up over a 2-year period. So guess what we're trying to do is make it not a short-term program, a 6-month or 4-month. The longer if they do what they need to do, we're going to stay with them. And we're finding better success the longer somebody gets to stay with us is kind of where that works.
What motivates you? Because I'm sure you have stories to tell. I'm sure a lot of them are sad. I'm sure your job can be emotionally draining at times. What motivates you to be a part of this mission?
I've been nonprofit since I got out of college, and I tell people when I do an orientation with every staff member that comes through, just to kind of give them a perspective of how I think the facility should operate, how it should feel as a new employee. And I talk about that. So I talk about what it is that motivates me. A couple things. One, I just was committed from the beginning. I don't know why, and it doesn't help your pocketbook as much. In the early years, that you get there when you're in my seat now, but when you're working for a nonprofit, you have to have something beyond dollars in your mind, right? It's about that piece. And,
yep.
And I did have that. I think that cancer thing I mentioned, that cancer scare, had it twice. At one point, didn't know if I was going to make it. That kind of reinvigorated me at age 30. And for I'm 53, so 23 years, I knew I was in the right place. Because when I was sitting there trying to figure out, when I leave this earth, in that moment, you're thinking, what have I done? I felt pretty good about what I had done to that point. I knew I could do more of that. So I've just got that. I don't know. It's just in there, Travis. I don't know what else to tell you other than it's in there, and I just can't get away from it.
I think that makes a lot of sense. And it's just that sense of giving back, a sense of purpose, a sense of mission. I think, and you and I are about the same age, so I think we all go through that at some point. When I leave this place, what contribution did I make? What I love about the Omaha Home for Boys, and you guys have done this for several years now, is that you have real world examples and good stories to tell the kids and the young adults that use your services or need your services. And coming up on September 9th, you are going to be celebrating 100 years of the Omaha Home for Boys. This is a lunch that goes from 11:30 to 1. And the keynote speaker is going to be Michael Orr. Now, a lot of people will remember him as basically the star of The Blind Side, a very good movie, important movie. But his story is so fascinating. And if you want tickets, go to ohb.org. That's ohb.org. What did it take to get Michael Orr to come to Omaha?
We've been trying, honestly, Lori and I in a development department, we've been trying to get Michael Orr for 5 or 6 years now, pretty much since we got there. And because his story is, we've seen the movie, but like you said, the story behind him is even more powerful because he's like our kids. They'd get taken away from his parents, but he'd always run away and go back to them. And people would say, why would you do that, right? That this is better for you. Well, it's still your parents and you love your parents, period. And he talks about that in his book and a lot of stuff. So we had to wait for football to end is kind of how it worked out. So we've been talking to him every year, but we finally found the time to do it. And then obviously had to cancel last year for the pandemic. And he was kind enough to still reschedule with us the following year. So we're very excited, and I can't wait to kind of meet him and hear what he has to share with us.
So this really is, you're celebrating 100 years, but this is really year 101, right? If my math is correct.
In October will be a full 101. So we say we're in our 100th year. We had to kind of pivot there with a little bit of a pandemic that rolled through us.
No, that makes total sense. And I think we're all, if we can just have that, 2020 back, right? It's like 2020 did exist. We just put it on pause, and I think the soccer tournament, the Euro 2020, everybody kept asking me, well, it's 2021. I said, yeah, but it was scheduled last year. So they're just it's like the year didn't exist. I'm fascinated by talking to leaders. I'm fascinated when I talk to CEOs, and because I like to talk about leadership. And you and I talked briefly before this, before we hopped on LinkedIn and Facebook and YouTube today about your thoughts on leadership and the way you attack it. And it's a team approach. And the acronym is TEAM, with trustworthiness, excellence, accountability, and motivation. How do you put these all into motion, not just with your team at the Omaha Home for Boys, but the people you serve?
And again, this is a simple, we've all read books, we've all done these different things, but for me, these stood out over my lifetime, just saying, if you're really doing these main four things, you're going to be successful in whatever it is you're doing. And so the same goes with that rung approach I was talking about with the kids. First off, can we trust them? And more importantly, can they trust us? That is it takes our folks. And I want to be very clear when people see this, that I've progressed to, I'm raising money. I'm out doing the events and speaking and doing this kind of stuff. The people that do the real work are the ones working with those kids. And I always like to publicly thank them for their work because, I get the fun job now of promoting and doing all that. Yeah. Even when I was at the Y before, you have to work your way up. And so it's always important to recognize those that are putting in the time. But we use that kind of theory in everything, our kids, all those approaches. We use the term OHB strong, just like everybody kind of has adopted that, because together we're stronger than we can be separately. And so it's more just in action, and we're trying really hard to show those things, not by what you say, but by what you do. And that can be a challenge, right? I mean, if people aren't happy about a situation, they're going to say you're not those things. And I always open.
And that's in every organization, right? I mean, you could go to the largest companies in downtown, you're going to get the same thing. I get it.
Yep. And so I always just say, if there's anybody that sees, when I first meet with them, or at 5-10-year careers, if you see any of this not happening, I ask them to come talk to me about that. And I think that's important because the door is always open. And I think just doing those, if you emulate those things, then everybody finds success in doing so. Those aren't things that are directly measurable. They're more who you are as a unit. And then if everybody's doing it, you look good and things go well, typically.
Yeah, it's funny. I put this out on my LinkedIn page the other day, and I just asked who people look up to as leaders. And I think you said Cy Blakely and Simon Sinek. And Cy's from Elkhorn, right? She's from the Omaha area.
Yeah.
And I was a Tony Robbins guy. I fell for the infomercials back when I was in my young 20s and things weren't going right. And you're like, but I don't say you have to believe everything that the people say, but if you take bits and pieces and nuggets that work for you, it's amazing how transformational a lot of that stuff can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And you said Tony Robbins and some others. I had others early in career, and those are the ones I'm kind of following a little more now. And the reason I like them, I think Simon Sinek has the Leaders Eat Last, and kind of that trying to figure out what that looks like. But then, Cy is this is the deal, right? It's, things like, it's hard to do anonymous surveys because you don't know who you're talking to. And some of the stuff we were trained to do, she's basically challenging. And I think that's I think that's a good thing to do, is challenge, the status quo and just keep trying to do better. And like I said, we all make mistakes probably daily. And we just got to keep growing and learning from those.
It's funny because back when I first listened to Tony Robbins, he had an acronym that said "Can I?" And that was constant and never-ending improvement. I think it's just a good thing to live by. Here's the Omaha for Boys mission. That's transform a life and strengthen a community. I think that's I think that speaks volumes. It's very straightforward. And did you come up with that mission? Has it always been the Omaha Boys for Mission? But talk about living that mission on a daily basis.
Yeah, the mission itself has been around for a little while. We did an adjustment on that about 5-6 years ago. The Transform a Life, Strengthen the Community came when we redid our logo on our shirts and, just kind of reinvented ourselves for what we see as the next 100 years. We worked with a company in town, and we just walked through focus groups and all that. And we just came down to that simple. You can see where I'm coming from on the simpleness of stuff, right? If we transform that life, it does make that community better. I don't know if you've ever heard the starfish story about the man on the beach, and there's a bunch of starfish dying on the beach, and down in the way he sees a guy throwing them back one at a time. And there's literally hundreds of thousands of them. He walks up and said, you can't save all these. And he said, I saved that one. And so they both started throwing them. And I think it comes from some biblical stuff, but it's a cool story about we saved that one. And I have a starfish and that saying on my desk. I've had it for years. And because every day is a different day. We might help 10 one month. We might only help one, but that one is vitally important to the future. So
I've never heard that story, but you're right. One at a time. And you say you can't save them all, but if you just keep at it, you're going to save a lot more than if you don't keep at it. So
that one could be 4 more when they have kids. And, it's that generational stuff. If you change one life, that can then produce 3 or 4 more that might have been on a bad cycle. So again, it's hard work and it's tiring work for those that are doing it, because it isn't, you're a sports guy, right? So I always tell people, if you're shooting 30% from the free throw line, you're on the bench at the end of the game, right? But if you're hitting 30% in baseball, you're batting 300. So we're more like baseball. So we believe it's the small stuff, but it does count.
Not only if you bat 300 in a season, you're an all-star. If you bat 300 for a career, you're a Hall of Famer.
Exactly. I mean, so we just always talk about how you measure things, right? If you measure on basketball numbers, we look like we're failing. Baseball, we're doing pretty good, helping 3 or 4 out of 10. But because it's tough work. I mean, these kids, their families, the situations. You're right. I don't see them daily with the kids, but I hear the stories, and it blows your mind. It really does sometimes.
You have a mission, but you also have a goal, and that's changing and saving lives. And the programs you address education, employment, health and wellness, mental and behavioral health, substance abuse. They're all equal, but is there one in the community of Omaha that is lacking? And what's the target? Is it education that is the toughest one? Employment, health and wellness, substance abuse, or mental illness? What do you think right now is the biggest obstacle for people?
Without a doubt, it's mental health. Because if you're not mentally healthy, you can't be physically healthy, and you can't be employed. You can't get through a school day. And we're finding that a lot of research is being done on brain development nowadays, so that you see these kids that have seen, like me growing up, I didn't ever see somebody get beat up. I didn't see somebody come in with a gun. That just never happened. If these kids see that regularly, it's almost like it's not really PTSD, but they're trying to kind of figure out what it is. But it traumatizes their brain enough that it can impact how their body functions compared to their age and years. So you might be dealing with an 18-year-old kid that has a 14-year-old mentality. That's a scary combination when some big, strong, or guy or girl, and then you've got this mental side is very, very limited. And so they're just trying to figure that out. So mental health to me drives the whole ship. And we just started a program a few years back to provide mental health services in the community.
I'm going to open up here because I grew up in what I would call an abusive family. I had some PTSD, and you listen to my podcast. I'm pretty open, but what I found is, the thing with mental health, and I'm very empathetic and sympathetic towards this. The best way to deal with it, at least it was for me, was to openly talk about it. Once you get people to openly talk about everything that's happened, and then I've also found that if you have to find the funny in it, right? If I can find the funny in it, it helps me deal and cope. Listen, I've had plenty of therapy. I've had hospital stays, and I'm not ashamed to say it. But you're right. It doesn't matter what race, class, anything. Mental health affects everybody.
Yep. And you're right. I had heard your story before and all that stuff. And it's just, you're 100% right. And getting a 17 and 18-year-old or 16-year-old that they try to be tough and show that they're this, and for get them to say, these things out loud is very hard to do. Yep. But we do see the success when it starts happening. So it's about having the right therapist. We always say the therapist has to kind of look like the people they're talking to. It can't, like you and I look alike, but it can't be us in front of some kids that say, hey, you don't even understand what I've been through. So we all know that with diversity, equity, inclusion, all that good stuff, that it's important to make sure the staff understands and can really match up with the culture and all that kind of stuff for this to have any chance to work.
Your programs, you have the Inspiration Hill residential living, the Jacobs Place transitional living, branching out, independent living, supportive housing, and clinical services. You offer so much. If somebody's just learning something about Omaha Home for Boys today, what's the best way for somebody to help one of these programs or just help your mission overall? How can people get involved? Yeah, of course, you're always going to take a check. I get that, but are there other ways? Are there other ways that people can help out?
You're right. The check is no. I was kidding. Money always works, but because it is expensive to do this work, and unlike many things, through the state and some of the work we do, we don't get paid full price for what we do. So you talked about your nonprofit. We have to raise nearly $3 million a year through a multitude of different ways of going about it, and that's never going to change because the money's just not there at the state level to pay full price for all of this stuff. But there's a couple ways I would say that if you have an agency, during the holidays, our kids come up short a lot, and not just with gifts. We're talking about socks and good warm clothes. And so we have a youth mart that we run. We have a company that runs it for us, but it's on our campus. You could give us slightly used furniture, clothing, just like you would maybe at a Goodwill or whatever. And then each kid that goes to it's called My First Place, when they go to their first apartment, or they get to pick out a couch and a chair and some clothes. So we're always looking for that. Opportunities like if you have a group of people that wants to come in, we do game nights. Again, understand all of this is pretty much on hold the rest of this year because of COVID stuff. Yeah. But we had different local banks that would come in and spend the night. They have dinner with the kids, and then they just play games, ping pong, because we believe naturally mentoring is the right answer. It's hard to pick and say, you're my mentor, Travis, right? Yeah. It's if we match up, we're playing ping pong, and you start getting to know each other, then you start talking about stuff. And then maybe it's an exchange of number, and he can call you or she can call you if she has a problem. So we've got that opportunity. And then the other one is the same thing with hygiene and stuff. We try to teach hygiene. A lot of these kids don't understand deodorant and brushing your teeth and changing clothes, just simple stuff that we've all known our whole lives. They have never been shown that. So then you get into, you think mental health's bad, try to not smell appropriate and be made fun of by your peers. That just exacerbates the whole deal. And so we do that every year too. So we do drives that you could do at your own office. We can come pick it up, whatever it is. So any of those things on top of the obviously just direct donation, we would be open to having that conversation for sure.
Well, and of course, the best way right now is to help the Omaha Home for Boys celebrate 100 years. And that's coming up on September 9th. It's going to go from 11:30 in the morning till 1 o'clock in the afternoon. You're going to hear Michael Orr, his inspirational story. You can learn more about it by watching The Blind Side, but it's also you're helping the Omaha Home for Boys. You can get that directly at tickets at ohb.org. A little bit about MCL Construction as we wrap up today. You can find us on the social media channels, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and of course our website at mclconstruction.com. Jeff, a fun conversation. I hope you enjoyed it. I learned a lot about the Omaha Home for Boys. And our relationship is interesting. I mean, you don't do a lot of construction, I think we've been a really good partner of yours when you need
Absolutely.
stuff on campus, and I hope we've been able to serve your needs when you need a partner in the construction world too.
No, absolutely. You guys have been wonderful, both for the supporting the kids, doing great work, obviously, and helping us walk through those processes. Because that's not our a business code, right? So you guys know what you're doing. You have to show us the way. So I appreciate all of that.
Not a problem. Jeff, thank you so much for your time, and we will talk to you next time when we have another Client Conversations. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you next time.